Hey everyone, it's Eric. It is Thursday here, and I am just busy preparing for the next D2C Plus workshop, which is an amazing one we're doing with Ryan McKenzie from True Earth, as well as Saul Garcia, the lead Google Ads technician here at Pilothouse. So, really excited about that. This week's All Killer No Filler, we decided to dip back into some other content that we had created for a recent PR opportunity that we're kind of pursuing, where we had our social media director, Maya Sampson, read us a bunch of questions sort of from this publication, and myself, Pilothouse CEO Dave Steele, as well as Pilothouse co-founder and head CRO Kyle Hitchcocks, all just sort of discussed these questions, what we thought about the state of D2C, where we think it's going. I think there's some good insights here. It's always fun to rap with these guys, and yeah, I hope you really enjoy it. We'll be back next week with a very special YouTube version to talk a little bit more about this workshop that we have coming. A very special YouTube All Killer No Filler next week, back with more regular programming. But for today, please enjoy this conversation about the future of D2C with the stakeholders at Pilothouse and D2C Newsletter. Cheers. We all know personalization improves conversion rates, but did you know that with Sheer ID, you can invite and reward consumers based on their groups and affiliations securely? So you make an exclusive offer to a group like teachers, military, or first responders, and Sheer ID's simple checkout integration makes sure that only the right people are able to redeem. The best part is that the process is incredibly simple, and it's embedded right into your brand's checkout flow. Start your personalized checkout campaign today. Visit sheerid.com. On with the show.
So the first idea is, can you talk a little bit about how the DTC has changed over the last decade and maybe some thoughts on where it might go over the next 5 to 10 years?
DTC is just a funny name for infomercials. Direct to consumer has been around for a while. Started, way back when, back in magazines, in fact, or other mediums. I actually just heard a podcast on skywriting and how brands were using that for direct to consumer marketing. So, it goes back a long ways.
But I think where we come in is on where performance marketing meets up with direct to consumer. And 10 years ago, we were applying a lot of the same marketing techniques that we're applying now to great effect in this direct to consumer space. But back then, the economy wasn't ready. We weren't promoting as many great things back then because there weren't. I don't know if this makes sense, but basically, I'm like, it's basically like the performance marketing has always been there. Direct to consumer has always been there, but really where we come in, and I think where we've seen the biggest acceleration over the last 5 year, 10 months, you could say, over the last year, is in this merging of performance marketing and direct to consumer. And that's really, I think, where our perspective comes in.
As well, I think just the usability of platforms to reach consumers in the last 10 years has changed. It's become quite easy for mom and pop to pick up, the Facebook tools and reach customers at a scale that's never been possible before. With, you can get so far with minimal expertise, and it is accessible now.
We all have access to the same tools, which is crazy.
But that accessibility is going to be challenged with privacy concerns on the rise, right? Whereas as these new updates come out, not just everybody is going to be able to achieve results going direct to consumer with performance marketing, because you're going to actually have to have a certain level of expertise and knowledge and tactics and strategies in order to compete. So in some ways, we're kind of going through this a little bit of an hourglass pinch where it's going, we're going through the glory days, but I think there are going to be some challenges where we're going to have to continue to innovate.
So the Pixel was like a great leveler, you're saying, in a way, like the Pixel, the way the Pixel previously operated leveled the playing field for a lot of people because it was so accessible to everyone. It just worked for everyone. But with that going away and becoming less powerful, it's going to leave it to the more arcane performance marketers who really know how to work this stuff to make it work, you think?
I do think so. And an advent of new machine learning. You've been having a lot of intriguing calls lately about this new era beyond the pixel, right? If the pixel, when the pixel dies, the new tech, those who can master the new tech, which I don't think is going to be that accessible. You know what I mean? Having that understanding and that knowledge.
The new tech, I mean, server to server conversations between like machines is kind of where it's going. That actually has been around for 10 years. You know, Eric and I have been doing that for 12 years. And so it's just machines talking to each other. If you talk to a developer, they'd be like, well, yeah, why was it never this way? And it wasn't this way because of the data that they could access through the JavaScript pixel and stuff that could be manipulated on page. There's another thing in the last 10 years that's changing too, especially the last 2 years, 1 year. But, you know, brands like Native, man, what are those bars? I think they got bought by Kellogg. Kellogg's like 500 million or something like that. There's all the big companies that are now trying to play, and, you know, we're working with one or two of them, and their goal is to figure out this space. So they have no idea what to do. All their systems are antiquated, and the services or the agencies or partners that service them, their expertise and knowledge of this transition also is antiquated. And so there's going to be, you know, more competition from these big brands who have big budgets. So just another pressure. But we answered that one really well, I think. The convergence, yes.
It really is, right? Like, you know, this is the thing I talk about all the time in meetings when we're talking about D2C is, you know, we came from this scrappy upstart background of performance marketers, and performance marketers are quite often individuals who are figuring out how to, you know, make money on the internet, essentially. And they came.
Yeah, we were geeks. We were geeks in the shadows.
Geeks in the shadows, kind of thing. But now these geeks are running the acquisition departments for these funded brands. For the, you know, I've had 2 people at Fortune 100 companies look me up and be like, "Oh, I remember you from the forums." And what's interesting is like the performance chickens have come home to roost a little bit, where you know, these high-end performance marketers, now remarketed as sort of growth marketers, are in these positions of power within these organizations. And that's what we're seeing. The mom and pop shop and Kellogg's are on the same field in a lot of ways right now. And they all have access to the same kinds of tactics that we talk about in the direct-to-consumer.co newsletter, the D2C newsletter. It's kind of a free-for-all. It's really interesting. I can have a conversation in the morning with someone running a mom and pop brand who's seeing 1,000x more results in a given month because of something they figured out on Facebook. And I could talk to the same person at Unilever who's kind of on the same playing field, because a lot of these big companies are actually really focused on launching digitally native brands, not just launching their own products that you can get at the grocery store. They're really focused on launching, you know, their own digitally native brands that kind of make it on their own 2 feet. It's really interesting to be a part of.
And those digitally native brands now are desperately trying to find retail, right? So it really is. Yeah. It really is a convergence.
Awesome. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some reasons why sellers and legacy brands might choose to do DTC?
I think it also depends at great length, like, you know, mom and pop versus like idea versus, you know, Fortune 500 brand, or a company like Peloton. Like, give me out of here, you know, let's go public with this DTC brand, and let's scale and lean into this thing and capitalize on it. So, like, you know, ideation, you should start with DTC. You should do market research. You should, you have 15 different product ideas, $1,500, and figure out which one you're going to follow up with, right? Big brands also, you know, R&D departments. You can just get market research and figure out what the market will resonate with in a really easy way. But at the same time, like Eric is saying, you know, there's inflated DTC brands like Wayfair as an example, super unprofitable, super high valuation. But, you know, there's companies that are super profitable, like Peloton as an example. And so it's good. You can find your audience and you can figure out, regardless of channel, whether the audience is receptive. And so it's just additional sales at the end of the day. And
in a way, what I think you're getting at, and I hear the opportunity to do again and again is sort of like, is build brand with the idea of performance marketing built into it. So instead of like build it and they will come, build it in an iterative way, in a similar way to the way we build campaigns or to the way that we build these marketing strategies. So you can actually see in real time what's resonating with people, and sort of, follow that way. I don't know if that makes sense. What do you think?
I think we're talking from kind of our background, and so it's like this, like, cool, let's put a bunch of ads up and figure out where we're going with our business. I think that is the advantage I'm kind of talking about, is that you really are speeding up. You're speeding up time to market, really.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of ways you could take that, but.
And your ability to get traction and, to get feedback and traction, right? Like, I think that's the advice that we hear again and again. When you do have some customers, you call them. You really, there's still no, even in this world of like high scalable commerce, there really isn't that substitute for calling your best customers and really understanding what they love about your product, really focusing on those kinds of things and building out from there.
Andrew really said it once when I heard it for the first time. It's subtle, but it's that customer acquisition first marketing, right? It's just starting with what will consumers buy and working back from there, as opposed to traditionally you start with a product. And we are very quickly able to acquire customers for just about anything, and therefore you can grow your business with data, as opposed to being in a boardroom with a whiteboard and holding focus groups and trying to guess what consumers want. You can actually just go out there and find that out.
Lastly, can you talk about the importance of customer data in the realm of DTC a little bit?
There's so many layers to that.
I know.
It's an onion. It's thick and juicy. Is that are you, well, maybe we just kind of hit all of it, but there's obviously a compliance component. There's an ethics component. There's a technical visibility through analytics component. There's a PII, personal information. There's regulatory concerns around that. There's shifts on platform, obviously. iOS versus Facebook as an example for the recent updates for Apple's attack on everything that is not privacy first, as a branding decision that will carry them through the next 10 years. So where do you want to start?
I'm a believer. I can't speak for Pilothouse, but I'm a believer in privacy, but also in the value of like a consumer-focused internet. I actually don't know if I'm prepared to go to really defend, like to go into this, but I just, what I know is there's still going to be the same number of ads on the internet. And so I'm really interested in finding ways to make sure that the ads are still relevant and still effective for all parties. While, what's interesting about this situation is it's taking the ethics concern sort of off the table in a way, because people are going to be forced to make a decision on their privacy. And then everyone's going to be forced to react from there. And I think, I think it's interesting because it does take the morality concerns of data privacy out of it, because it's making every consumer make a very stark choice. Mm-hmm. What's going to be interesting is the backlash that happens potentially with people who just start getting really irrelevant or worse ads because of this. I don't know if anyone will care, but it's going to be interesting.
It is like walking around and always being treated like a stranger, as opposed to walking around and being treated like people recognize you in a way. I think there's a fine line to be drawn there in terms of what is known about you and where you personally draw your line. I think the concern is that consumers won't have an option to define where they draw the line. It's a switch right now. It's either on or it's off. Mm. And I could see a future where there are some things, like I do want them to know what my interests are, because if I like computers, I want to see what the latest tech is, and I want to see the latest computers. But there's no way right now. If you opt out of that prompt, they won't know. They won't know that, and no longer will you be able to get those. Call it the semi-personal. SPII.
Yeah, nice. I think it's, I mean, there's this like legacy technology that, in terms of like DTC specifically, like it's internet channels and buying traffic, you need all the data, but you don't need all the personal data. And so we're up against this wall of knowing, you know, what is a conversion rate or what are these important sales metrics in these ad platforms? That's the stuff that we live, eat, and breathe. And so what we're seeing, I mean, if we're talking iOS, is that through this transition, the data is now becoming murky. And if the data is becoming murky, that means we can't make good decisions and serve the right people the right type of ads they want to see. And so on the flip side of that, I totally get what Apple's doing, and I support it as a consumer. And they're making change, and change will come sooner as a result. As the old school performance DTC marketer, I'm super stoked because all my competition is going to fall off because they're not comfortable riding that bull without clear visibility. They don't know what tools to use. And so I'm kind of torn from it. I'm a huge advocate for managing and tracking PII and only using that when consumers have opted in and doing everything the right way. Pilothouse does take pride in that, and I think that like those are going to continue to change and evolve as markets kind of catch up, or governments get older. The old white guy in office will be replaced by different groups of people, and those people will be more forward thinking, and they will be looking out for consumers, and they will be technically savvy. And so, I mean, the next 10, 20, 30 years, it's all going to change, and it's probably going to change 5 times. So we just got to buckle up and support the right decisions.
And keep honing to tried and true direct marketing tactics that have worked since the 1950s in some ways. Problem, agitation, solution. We just did a big workshop on building pre-sale page content. And the beauty with building funnels that include things like pre-sale pages is that you can drive wider amounts of traffic, like less targeted traffic to pages like this, and because they use these direct marketing techniques of selling people, of introducing a problem, of introducing a character before you introduce the problem, all these sort of age-old techniques become that much more relevant to make us, again, we just have to become better marketers, or we have to be the good marketers that we are. In a world where we're not going to be able to be using this pixel to target people as precisely.
Awesome. So do you guys have any last words or pieces of wisdom for e-commerce retailers to wrap it up?
I think if you're not online, you need to at least, be online, whether that's a store, in case someone does want to buy online. If you have an existing business that is successful online but need to scale, just find a good partner to help you that isn't going to bamboozle and knows the ropes, and you can actually get a return on. And a tip there is just find a partner that'll work on performance. If you're a retail brand, get online. There's different complications for that. Knowing what you can afford on an actual transaction. Say you're a $100 product and you can only afford $25, but your cost per acquisition is maybe 50. Therefore, you're upside down. You need to make sure that you have a good game plan on how to manage those customers and bring them back. And if you're a big CPG brand that wants to scale, call Pilothouse.
And I'd say own your data. So as much as you can, own your customers. Every e-commerce person is taking an email when a purchase is made, but there are other techniques, different kinds of lead generation things you can do in order to bring people into your owned environment. We're an agency, so we're obviously looking to scale people's ad spends. But the more attention people have to their own data, the better it will make their ad buying as well when it comes to things like lookalike audiences and things like that as well. But really, yeah, owning your audience and having a really effective communication strategy with them that you own. So either over email or SMS is something pivotal for any D2C brand, I think, in 2021.
For me, I'll take a lead from one of our creative geniuses, Evan O'Gorman, and say, let performance dictate the creative. It's a different world, DTC marketing, and you have to detach yourself from your brand and be willing to let the consumer choose what they like. which means you have to test rapidly, you have to test broadly, and lean into what your audiences are engaging with and buying. And sometimes that won't be what you want it to be, and you have to be okay with that.
Awesome.
Great. Thanks so much, guys.